Part 4. Landing 300 Years in Advance. Author, Chao-Ji Dupang. Chapter 31. Meow. When the fat cat smelled the tempting meat aroma of the shadow leopard, he felt that he was about to fall. In his heart, he still didn't want to pay attention to Chen Ronghuo. But his body was out of his control and he walked to Chen Ronghuo's feet step by step. His eyes, which were originally amber-like orange-yellow, seemed to be flashing with light, and became as crystal clear as jade, staring closely at the piece of meat in Chen Ronghuo's hand. The original shadow leopard meat was fragrant enough, but the piece in Chen Ronghuo's hand. Is it fragrant? Chen Ronghuo smiled. This is what I prepared for you, how about trying it? He lowered his head and put the meat in his hand to the fat cat's mouth. Woo! The fat cat snatched the piece of meat in one bite, then turned around and ran back to the wall, as if he was afraid that Chen Ronghuo would take the piece of meat back. Then, when he saw that Chen Ronghuo had no intention of taking the piece of meat back, he immediately showed an intoxicated expression and accelerated the speed of chewing the meat. Seeing this, Chen Ronghuo shook his head and smiled, not caring. Then he picked up a new piece of waste meat from the bowl with his left hand, and once again integrated the attributes into the waste meat one by one. This time, he changed the order of integration of each attribute. He first chose to integrate the nutritional attribute into the waste meat. In the end, he integrated 5 nutritional attributes into this piece of waste meat before he felt resistance. Is it really like this? The integration order of each attribute is different, and it can be combined into things with different attributes. Chen Ronghuo's heart moved. Then he integrated the delicious attribute, taste attribute, and easy digestion attribute into this piece of meat. Enhanced version of shadow leopard meat, delicious add 2, taste add 2, easy digestion add 3, nutrition add 5. In the end, he got such a piece of shadow leopard meat with new attributes. At the same time, the fat cat also ate all the meat just now. Such deliciousness has become the past, leaving regret and aftertaste in its eyes. Just when it was feeling lost, its nose moved and it suddenly smelled the familiar smell again. Its body stagnated and it quickly turned its head. Meow. With a cry, the next moment, it couldn't help but run to Chen Ronghuo's side again. But this time, it seemed to feel that what it had just done was a bit bad, so after running to Chen Ronghuo's side, it rubbed its head on Chen Ronghuo's legs, like a spoiled child. Eat it, if it's not enough, there's more. Chen Ronghuo smiled and handed the shadow leopard meat in his hand to the fat cat again. Meow. This time, the fat cat called out before holding the piece of meat in its mouth. At the same time, it didn't run away as soon as it got the meat like before. Is this guy a cook? It seems that ordinary cooks can't make this kind of meat, right? And he didn't use any tools. At this time, the fat cat didn't understand that Chen Ronghuo could continuously turn a piece of ordinary meat into this kind of extremely delicious meat. It felt that it couldn't understand Chen Ronghuo anymore. But no matter how he did it, it seemed good to have such a cook at home. A brief thought flashed through his mind, and he could no longer resist the temptation of the delicious shadow leopard meat in his mouth, and immediately chewed it. Seeing the fat cat's appearance, Chen Ronghuo shook his head. Through the fat cat's eating, he came to a conclusion again. After he integrated the attributes into the shadow leopard meat one by one, he could still feel the existence of those attributes, and he could still absorb those attributes again. But after the fat cat chewed the shadow leopard meat and ate it into his stomach, he could only sense the existence of the nutritional attributes. At the same time, he could also feel that the nutritional attributes were gradually disappearing, and he couldn't take it out through the fat cat's stomach. Thinking of this, he began to try new orders and new combinations, and integrated all the remaining attributes in his hand into the pieces of waste meat in the big bowl. The fat cat also began to enjoy the feast with him. All the enhanced shadow leopard meat eventually went into its stomach. Its stomach didn't swell much. But because the enhanced shadow leopard meat was rich in nutrition and most of it was easy to digest, it still felt that it was full. But even if it was full, it still didn't have enough of that deliciousness. When everything was over, Chen Ronghuo saw that the sky had completely darkened, and suddenly yawned. He was really tired that day. His body was full of vitality because of the recovery of the vibrant properties of the yellow heart cabbage, but his spirit was really exhausted. Especially after he got the warlock certificate. Before, the warlock certificate turned into a strange mark, which was branded in the depths of his soul, as if there was some kind of sequelae, and his fatigue became more obvious. Okay, I'll get you something else to eat in the future. Chen Ronghuo looked at the fat cat who was still looking at him eagerly, stood up, and put away the bowls and chopsticks. The fat cat was a little disappointed. But thinking that Chen Ronghuo would live with him, he felt better. It would be nice to have such a master. He was moved. And then, he suddenly thought, Chen Ronghuo could make the meat of the shadow leopard so delicious, so could he make the salted fish so delicious? Thinking so, a green light flashed in its eyes, and it suddenly turned into a shadow, and rushed out of the yard like lightning. Where are you going? Seeing the fat cat leave, Chen Ronghuo called out. But when he finished speaking, the fat cat had disappeared. Chen Ronghuo shook his head helplessly. It was so disobedient, it seemed that he had to use some tricks to subdue it. Thinking of this in his heart, he stood at the gate of the yard and looked around, and listened again, and found that only the fire flashed at the entrance of the village and the sound came out, and the whole village was now silent. Not bad. He took a breath, and then, as if he was a thief, he found a few smooth wooden sticks on the ground nearby, and then left his yard and walked towards the abandoned house across the street. He wanted to relieve himself. He didn't find anything like a toilet in the village, and even if there was a toilet, he didn't dare to go there. Because in the eyes of the villagers of Xiaohe village, he was a powerful warlock who was high above. Does a powerful warlock need to relieve himself? Before he knew these common sense, he would naturally go to the bathroom secretly to avoid being discovered. 5 or 6 minutes later, Chen Ronghuo returned home refreshed. Seeing that fat cat was not there, he did not think much, took off his coat directly, and fell asleep on the con. That's it for today, and everything else will wait until tomorrow. Now that the ability of the left hand has been tested, I can try to integrate the properties absorbed by the left hand into the talking big river crab tomorrow. For example, if I can find properties such as petrification from the stone, I can experiment with the river crab first. Hoo. After a while, Chen Ronghuo's snoring sounded in the room. He was really sleepy. Thanks to the book friend Xuanhuan Jipping for the reward, and then ask for the recommendation votes. The current daily push is 140, I don't know if it can exceed 200. Don't be stingy if you have recommendation votes at landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 32. The night fell, at the entrance of Xiaohe village, although Chen Ronghuo was not there, the villagers still followed the tradition and lit a big bonfire, cutting up the meat of the shadow leopard. The people who stayed in Xiaohe village ate less, and many people just drank a few mouthfuls of soup. Most of the shadow leopard meat went to the members of the hunting team and the children who practiced martial arts in the village. The meat of the demon is of great use to the warriors, so they naturally have their own distribution plan for it. The hunting team is the backbone of Xiaohe village, and the children are the future of Xiaohe village, so they are allocated the most. Haha. After eating and drinking, the warrior apprentices and the members of the hunting team came to the open space, and with loud shouts, they played the incomplete version of the Tiger Refining Heart Fist. The Tiger Refining Heart Fist is a top-grade fist for apprentices, and the incomplete version is only of the lower grade, which is the most popular fist in the continent of gods. It was just because Xiaohe village was too poor, so even when they reached the level of formal warriors, they still practiced this boxing. However, one figure after another moved freely under the light of the blazing bonfire, stirring up a strong boxing wind, and still performed a wild scene. They practiced boxing at this time, and they were digesting the huge nutrients in the shadow leopard meat through boxing, transforming it into their own blood and energy to enhance their strength. The sound of these people practicing boxing was huge, but Chen Ronghuo was completely unaware of this scene. After he returned to the house, he fell on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. The power of the warlock mainly comes from the soul. The transformation of the body by the warlock certificate is mainly aimed at the transformation of the soul. Chen Ronghuo originally did not have the qualifications of a warlock. He obtained the qualifications of a warlock through the warlock certificate, and a mysterious mark was imprinted in his soul, which had sequelae. This sequelae is lack of energy and always wanting to sleep. He wanted to cure this sequelae, unless he took a special treasure that could restore the soul, he could only recover through a long rest. Just as the warriors in Xiahe village were practicing martial arts enthusiastically, and Chen Rong was in a dream, a long black figure suddenly came to Xiahe village from the upper reaches of the big river near the village, that is, the direction of Shanghe village, with stiff steps. This long black figure, under the moonlight, had a creepy white face. Especially his eyes were empty and dead, as if he had no soul at all. At the same time, if someone was around him, they would smell an unpleasant corpse odor from him. After approaching Xiahe village, he turned his stiff head and looked at the bonfire where Huang Tai's Hung and others were. He seemed to sense that the blood and chi fluctuations emanating from there were too strong. He hesitated for a moment, then bypassed there and slowly walked into the village from the other side. After entering the village, the black figure continued to move stiffly, walking slowly from house to house along the village road. It seemed that because there was no one at home, he did not stop. Until he walked to the door of Chen Ronghuo's house. The fence gate in front of the courtyard gate could not stop his steps at all. He took a step forward, and the fence gate fell to the ground with a bang. Then the black figure continued to walk forward expressionlessly, until he came to the door of Chen Ronghuo's house. He stopped. The next moment, he raised his spotted arm and knocked on Chen Ronghuo's door again and again. Dong, dong dong. The strange knocking sound sounded, as if it could hit people's hearts directly and make people's hearts stagnate. Even Chen Ronghuo, who was in deep sleep, frowned at this moment, as if he had some difficulty breathing. Dong, dong. The black figure kept knocking on Chen Ronghuo's door, each time heavier than the last, until the door frame began to shake. The old wooden door even cracked with a click. But Chen Ronghuo was too sleepy. He was in a deep sleep, unaware of all this, and had no intention of waking up. Dong. Finally, after knocking on the door countless times, the black figure paused, and a strange color seemed to flash in his empty and dead eyes. Then he slowly turned around, took stiff steps, and walked along the village road, away from Xiahe village. After the black figure left, Chen Ronghuo turned over in the house, and his eyebrows were relaxed again. Meow. Shortly after the black figure left, a fat cat dragged back a sack of salted fish from somewhere. When he saw that his fence door was broken by something, he suddenly showed a trace of anger on his face. When he quickly came to the fence door and sniffed it, his face changed suddenly after smelling an astonishing stench of corpses. Then he no longer cared about the sack of salted fish in his mouth. Roar. After throwing away the sack of salted fish, his body grew slightly bigger, and from the depths of his throat he let out a roar like the one he made this morning when he threatened the wood spirit demon butterfly. Then his whole body rushed to the door of the house like a flash of lightning, jumped up, and rushed in through the crack of the window on the side of the door. Meow. When the fat cat rushed into the house and saw Chen Ronghuo still sleeping in a big letter shape, as if nothing had happened, he let out a long breath. As it exhaled, its orange fur gradually smoothed down. You dare to be my master's cook? No matter what you are. Don't let me catch you. After being angry for a while, the fat cat's body returned to its original state. Then it jumped lightly, picked up the quilt that was thrown aside by Chen Ronghuo with its mouth, and covered Chen Ronghuo with it again. Then it looked at Chen Ronghuo, lowered its head, and got into the quilt, sleeping beside Chen Ronghuo. As for the sack of salted fish thrown at the gate of the yard, how could salted fish be more important than the cook who wanted to be its master? The cook was almost killed, and it was so palpitating that it had no time to think about anything else at this time. At this time, it just wanted to be quiet. Just wanted to stay quietly by Chen Ronghuo's side. The next day, Chen Ronghuo slept until noon. When he woke up, he found that the fat cat who had come back at some point had actually crawled into his bed. He smiled. Meow meow meow. He rubbed the fat cat with both hands. After waking up the fat cat immediately opened its mouth and called several times, as if reminding him of something. But he didn't understand cat language at all. He thought the fat cat was hungry again, so he smiled and said, "I know, it must be hungry, right? Don't worry, I'll make you something delicious later." As he said this, he put on his clothes, got off the kong, opened the door and walked out of the house. When he opened the door, he suddenly felt something strange. I don't know why the door that was fine yesterday suddenly became a little shaky. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 33. Thinking this in his mind, Chen Ronghuo guessed that this was probably Shao's doing. They were the only two living creatures in the room. If not the fat cat, who else could it be? Especially when he saw a crack on the door, he shook his head. When he opened the door, the dazzling sunlight came through, making him squint his eyes and lower his head. Then he discovered the wooden fence that had fallen to the ground in his yard, and a large sack with unknown contents next to the wooden fence. What did this guy do last night? Chen Ronghuo frowned. But just when he was about to walk over and pick up the sack at the door to see what was inside, out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw a greenish-white color flickering slightly on the left side of the fence. In an instant, an idea flashed in Chen Ronghuo's mind and he turned his head suddenly. As he turned his head, he immediately saw a wood spirit demon butterfly hovering on the dead branch of colorful flowers and trees stuck in the ground. Rays of blue-white light shone from its charming wings and fell on the dead branches of the colorful flowers and trees. This wood spirit demon butterfly is obviously the one from yesterday. And after being baptized by the bluish-white brilliance it shed, not only greenery appeared on the dead branches of colorful flowers and trees, but also a few green buds emerged. This dead tree has sprouted buds and has really come to life. You're actually back again. Chen Ronghuo's eyes suddenly lit up when he saw this wood spirit demon butterfly. Although he was confident that he could conquer the fat cat, he didn't mind having a backup. Moreover, the ability of this wood spirit monster butterfly also fits what others think of him as a wood warlock. With his current ability, although he can only conquer one demon, it does not mean that he will only be able to conquer one demon in the future. The wood spirit demon butterfly, immersed in the happiness of resurrecting dead wood, suddenly saw Chen Ronghuo, was frightened, and immediately flew up to a higher place. When it saw that Chen Ronghuo didn't react excessively, it hesitated for a moment and then fell down again, speeding up the speed of the blue-white light. But its pair of hexagonal green eyes were always staring at Chen Ronghuo. Chen Ronghuo frowned. Although this wood spirit demon butterfly wanted to revive the colorful dead branches of flowers and trees in his yard, it was too wary. And most of them are not able to understand human language like fat cats. As a result, he had no way to communicate with fat cat like he did with him. What to do? Do you want to capture it directly? Thoughts flashed through Chen Ronghuo's mind. The idea of capturing it by hand was rejected by him the moment it appeared. Not to mention whether he could catch the wood spirit demon butterfly with his strength and whether he would be injured by the wood spirit demon butterfly. Even after capturing the wood spirit demon butterfly, he still couldn't figure out how to subdue it. But I can't capture it with my hands, but I can ask others to help. For example, let Huang Taizheng, Zhu Daipen, Ho San, and others take action. After they capture the wood spirit demon butterfly, I will play the good guy and save it. Suddenly, Chen Ronghuo touched his chin and thought of a pretty good idea. With his current strength, if he wants to conquer the demon, he can only start by exchanging feelings. As for using force, really use force. I don't know who will use force against whom. Meow. But just after he had this idea, the fat cat suddenly shook his tiger skin-like hair and lazily walked out of the house. Not good. Seeing Shamao, Chen Ronghuo's expression immediately changed slightly. But before he could do anything, Fat Cat, who had just walked out of the house, immediately saw the wood spirit demon butterfly dancing above his yard. Roar. The next moment, without any hesitation, it moved its throat and roared out. This voice was like a dragon's roar, carrying tremendous pressure. It is precisely because of its third special ability besides the two special abilities of body transformation and normal, to release dragon power. Call out. Hearing the roar of the fat cat, the wood spirit demon butterfly trembled. The next moment, it turned into a blue-white stream of light, like a sword, went straight into Qingming, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. You. Chen Ronghuo turned to look at Shamao. Shamao turned his head and ignored Chen Ronghuo. I cared about you so much last night. But you were seduced by that charming thing as soon as you woke up in the morning. Do you still want to be my master? The more the fat cat thought about it, the angrier he became. At the same time, I am worried about what if Chen Ronghuo is really attracted by the butterfly one day and no longer wants to be with him. It has been abandoned once, and I really don't want to be abandoned a second time. With this thought in its mind, it seemed as if it suddenly thought of some solution. Following it was a pair of amber cat eyes, shining extremely brightly under the sunlight. The next moment, it straightened its body and arrived in front of the withered branch of colorful flowers and trees. Looking at this withered branch of colorful flowers and trees, the fat cat rolled his eyes and walked around the dead branch twice through the gap in the fence. Then he looked at Chen Ronghuo and saw that Chen Ronghuo was still glaring at him. He twisted his face, turned his head, and raised his tail high. Wow! A splash of cat urine was poured under the colorful dead branches. This will be my territory from now on. This human being is my exclusive cook. No one can take it away. A unique smell came from the cat urine. After smelling it, the fat cat nodded with satisfaction. Then it turned around and dug the soil beside it with its claws to bury the urine. This guy. Seeing this scene, Chen Ronghuo was suddenly in tears and laughed. He really didn't know what to say. Forget it, let's take a long-term view on the matter of the wood spirit demon butterfly. I hope this colorful dead branch can attract it again. The most urgent thing now is to contract the fat cat first. Chen Ronghuo shook his head, walked to the gate, picked up the sack on the ground and took a look. But when he saw that the whole sack was filled with salted fish, his face suddenly turned black. Now, even if the fat cat could speak and say that it was not him who knocked down the fence, he would not believe it. Meow. When the fat cat saw Chen Ronghuo saw the salted fish in the sack, it called out and walked slowly to his side again, looking at him with a guilty and expectant look. It was guilty, obviously because of what happened just now. It was expecting Chen Ronghuo to help it make salted fish as delicious as the meat of the shadow leopard last night. Seeing the fat cat like this, Chen Ronghuo let out a long breath. Then his eyes flashed, and he suddenly said, "You actually asked me for food, Do you know how much trouble you just caused? The purpose of my staying in Xiahe village this time is to find a demon and contract it to be my partner. The wood spirit demon butterfly just now is my target. You said you scared it away, where can I find another demon? Chapter 1, Robbery Ticket. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 34. Find a demon and make a contract with him as your partner? When Fat Cat heard from Chen Ronghuo the purpose of staying in Xiahe village, he suddenly fell silent. It became a demon because of a chance encounter and got to where it is today. There is a part of inherited memory in its mind, and through the inherited memory, it naturally knows what the so-called contract is. It knows that once a demon contract is signed with a human, there will be no freedom. Although it feels very comfortable with Chen Ronghuo, it has never thought of signing a contract with Chen Ronghuo. Thinking of this, its fiery heart immediately became a little cold. Forget it. Seeing Fat Cat's appearance, Chen Ronghuo's eyes flashed, and he immediately knew that the time was not yet ripe. He shook his head and said, "You are such a stupid cat that you don't even know what a demon is. What's the point of me telling you this? Although you are an ordinary little cat, we get along well. One day, if I leave Xiahe village, I will take you with me if you are willing. But remember, next time, don't bother me to catch that wood spirit butterfly, okay? Although that wood spirit butterfly is timid by nature, it is a real demon. If it really shows its power, it can beat 100 people like you. What if it hurts you?" When the Fat Cat heard what Chen Ronghuo said, his eyes flashed, and he opened his mouth, wanting to say something but stopped. "Beat 100 of me, I can beat 100 of it." It was angry, but there were some inexplicable emotions lingering around, and it even had an impulse to tell Chen Ronghuo that it was a demon, and then sign a demon contract with Chen Ronghuo. But once the demon contract was signed, there was no freedom, so it finally endured it. "Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. You want to eat fish, right? I'll make it for you right now." Chen Ronghuo shook his head and said to himself, "I just heard that there is a demon in the village who specializes in stealing salted fish. Could this sack of salted fish be left here by it? This guy, it's okay to leave the fish here, but he even broke the gate of the yard. He is really not a good guy. By the way, you have been in Xiahe village for so long, do you know what kind of demon it is and what it looks like?" Fat Cat hurriedly shook his head at Chen Ronghuo's feet. However, Chen Ronghuo did not look at it, but put down the sack, stood up the fence door that fell on the ground, connected the broken rope, and tied the fence door to the pillar next to it again. While doing all this, he continued, "Look at me, I'm telling you these things again. You are an ordinary cat, you probably don't even understand what I say, what's the point of me telling you these things? Hey, it would be great if you were a demon. If you were a demon, I would just sign a contract with you. You are so lazy and like to eat so much, if you have this opportunity, you will definitely not give up, right?" After doing all this, he said nothing, took out the salted fish in the sack with his left hand, and after touching it again and again, he felt out the properties of all the salted fish, and then began to integrate new properties into the waste salted fish. The Fat Cat watched Chen Ronghuo's actions from the side, and his heart suddenly became more entangled. Enhanced salted fish, tempting fish fragrance add 6, salted fish nutrition add 5, fish bone softening add 5. In the end, Chen Ronghuo made a total of 5 salted fish with similar properties. However, the nutrition of enhanced salted fish add 5 and the nutrition of enhanced shadow leopard meat add 3 are two completely different concepts. It is estimated that the nutrition of the enhanced dried salted fish is add 10, which is difficult to compare with the add 3 shadow leopard meat. Just like eggs are nutritious and tomatoes are also nutritious, but the nutrients of the two are completely different. Can't wait. When everything was over, Chen Ronghuo smiled and handed a piece of enhanced dried salted fish to the fat cat. Meow Wu. The fat cat took the salted fish in its mouth. The bones of the salted fish have all softened, and the fishy fragrance is tempting, which immediately made its eyes narrow. Although the fish is delicious, it feels a little uncomfortable when it eats at this time because of the entanglement in its heart. It seems that a strong medicine is needed. Chen Ronghuo shook his head, touched the fat cat's head twice, stood up, threw all the remaining discarded salted fish on the ground, and crushed them with his feet. After these things were discarded, they were no different from soil clods in color and essence, and there was no trace of fish smell. After being stepped on by Chen Ronghuo for a while, they were mixed with the soil on the ground. After doing all this, he walked into the house. Judging from the current situation, it is still a little short of the right time to completely subdue the fat cat. After returning to the room, Chen Ronghuo found the crab meat left over from yesterday. This thing can be stored for a long time, and it is still crystal clear even if it is left overnight. He touched all the crab meat, and after feeling out all its properties, he blended it into a few small pieces of meat. Enhanced crab meat, delicious add 3, nutritious add 4, snow white and crystal add 2, easy to digest add 4, melts in the mouth add 3. After a few small pieces of crab meat entered his stomach, Chen Ronghuo felt a little hot in his body, as if he was full of strength. At the same time, the enhanced crab meat also completely captured his taste buds, leaving him with endless aftertaste. However, he chose to eat crab meat in this way not only for the deliciousness, but also to reduce the number of times he went to the bathroom. After solving the breakfast problem and walking out of the room, he saw that Fat Cat had finished all 5 salted fishes and was lying lazily on a stool looking up at the sky, wondering what he was thinking. At the same time, Ho San and Huang Xiaoshan also rushed over at this time. "Master, my grandfather asked you to go to my house for dinner." Seeing Chen Ronghuo, Huang Xiaoshan immediately spoke. "No need today, there was some crab meat left yesterday, and I just ate it." Chen Ronghuo shook his head, but he seemed to think of something again and said, "Forget it, I'll go with you and check on your uncle Huang Lin's injuries by the way." As he spoke, he walked out of the yard, closed the fence door, and followed Ho San and Huang Xiaoshan to Huang Tishan's house. Seeing Chen Ronghuo leave, Fat Cat turned his head and stared at Chen Ronghuo's back with his eyes, until Chen Ronghuo's figure disappeared from his sight for a long time, and then he came back to his senses. "Master, do you know that someone died in Shanghe village yesterday?" On the way, Huang Xiaoshan suddenly spoke. "Someone died, what happened?" Chen Ronghuo asked in surprise. "Didn't I tell you before that a ghost that specialized in sucking people's lifespan appeared in Shanghe village 3 years ago?" Huang Xiaoshan said excitedly. "That ghost appeared again. And it has become even more powerful. Before, only when someone opened the door for that ghost would it enter and harm people. Now, even if someone doesn't open the door for it, if the door is not strong, it can sometimes break in by itself." Chen Ronghuo was silent for a while after hearing this, and for some reason, he suddenly felt a little throbbing in his heart. He thought for a moment and asked, "Shanghe village and Xiahe village are not close, how did you know?" "It was the aunt of the Wu family. She had a quarrel a few days ago and took her children back to her parents' home in Shanghe village. Shanghe village was haunted last night, so she rushed back early in the morning." Huang Xiaoshan explained. "She said that if there had not been a sorcerer from Lushwiven town and several warrior guards of that lord, who would have died in Shanghe village. However, although the ghost was seriously injured by the sorcerer and escaped, the sorcerer and his several warrior guards were also seriously injured." Speaking of this, Huang Xiaoshan paused and said, "Also, I heard that the ghost can only be blocked by the door of the house for some reason, and other doors can't block it at all. It can knock down the doors of each household with a collision, which is strange." Thanks to the book friend Xuanhuan Jipping for another 500 coin reward. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 35. Then does anyone know where the ghost escaped? Chen Ronghuo asked. At this time, his heart felt tense. Also last night, while I was sleeping, the fence door outside my house was knocked down by something unknown. When he woke up in the morning, he also found that the door of his house was shaking and there were even cracks on it. He thought it was Fat Cat who did it before, but now it seems like it was really Fat Cat who did it. For the Fat Cat, that is also his home. Why did he destroy the door of his own home? Ordinary cats might do this, but fat cats are monsters and extremely intelligent, so how could they do this? Without Huang Xiaoshan's narrative, Chen Ronghuo would not have thought of this. But after hearing this from Huang Xiaoshan's mouth, his mind suddenly roared, and thoughts emerged one after another. Then he thought of the strange meows made by the fat cat when he had just woken him up in the morning. At that time, he thought the fat cat was hungry. But now it seems that the fat cat most likely knows something and is reminding him through that meow. Also, the fat cat who had never been caught stealing salted fish before, if it wasn't for a special reason, why would he throw a sack of salted fish at the gate this time and ignore it? A trace of cold sweat flowed silently from Chen Ronghuo's spine. Was my house visited by a ghost last night? If that were the case, if I hadn't been so sleepy last night, if it hadn't been for the fact that the door at home was still strong. Chen Ronghuo took a deep breath. By the way, he suddenly said, didn't you say last time that the ghost only sucked people's longevity? Why did it kill people this time? When he asked this question, he suddenly felt that his words were a bit silly. What could a child know? However, Huang Xiaoshan replied without hesitation, if it is not a special situation, it will only suck people's life and not kill people. But in the past, it sucked people's yang life, and people who were sucked into it could live for a few months. But this time it sucked people's longevity in Xiahe village, and those who were sucked only lived for a few hours before dying. When Huang Xiaoshan said this, his face turned a little pale. The day before yesterday, he was still telling Chen Ronghuo that he hoped that the ghost would come to him and suck his life, and then he could become an adult like Huang Taizheng. But now, after hearing that the person was dead, he obviously didn't think so anymore. Ho San on the side did not say a word from beginning to end. Although he had apologized to Chen Ronghuo yesterday, he was still a little embarrassed when facing Chen Ronghuo and didn't know how to get along with Chen Ronghuo. He is different from Zhu Deipen. Zhu Deipen didn't have any scheming, and he was very proud. But although he is taller than Zhu Deipen and has a deeper scheming mind, he is only 18 years old after all. He is also the #1 martial artist in the village besides Huang Taizheng, and his arrogance is also higher. Chen Ronghuo saved Huang Lin and saved him again. He thanked Chen Ronghuo. Chen Ronghuo showed super strength and he admired Chen Ronghuo. But if he wanted to make him not be reserved at all and see Chen Ronghuo smiling like Zhu Deipen, he really couldn't do it, at least not now. And because he was thinking about what happened last night, Chen Ronghuo also didn't talk to Ho San. At this time, he was really worried that the ghost would come to his house again at night. When I go back, I will find time to make some special attributes and integrate them into the door of my home. Chen Ronghuo made up his mind, no, we are not sure about this. That house is not strong either. I should strengthen the whole house. Chen Ronghuo regards his own life as extremely important. He has to live in this world for at least 300 years. In 300 years, he will probably encounter many dangers. He felt that he had to develop a habit of always being alert and cautious. With all kinds of things in mind, he had followed Ho San and Huang Xiaoshan to Huang Tishan's home. Seeing Chen Ronghuo approaching, Huang Taizheng immediately greeted him with a smile on his face. Sir, our village was a little lively last night, so it didn't disturb your rest, right? Fine. Chen Ronghuo shook his head. He slept so deeply yesterday that he really didn't hear anything. Sir, I made some leopard meat porridge this morning. You sit in the room first, and I will serve it to you later. After welcoming Chen Ronghuo into the house, Huang Taizheng said. There's no need for the meat porridge. Chen Ronghuo waved his hand, I've already eaten it at home. I came here mainly to help Huang Lin take another look. With that said, he walked directly towards Huang Lin. At this time, Huang Lin was lying on the kong. Although Huang Lin is short and skinny, he is a formal warrior after all and has strong recovery power. After he was out of danger, his complexion seemed to have completely returned to normal. Young master. Huang Lin's dark face turned red when he saw Chen Ronghuo walking straight towards him. He was about to sit up with his hands on the kong. Chen Ronghuo waved to him, pressed him down again and said, Okay, don't be so polite to me. I am Xiaoshan's master now, and we can be considered a family. Come, let me perform another technique to speed up your recovery. Village chief, prepare more food first. While pulling him closer, he reached out and integrated Huang Zhengke's attributes into Huang Lin's body one by one. After getting these properties, Huang Lin's body quickly responded. Then, when Huang Lin was drinking the meat porridge prepared by Huang Taizheng, Chen Ronghuo said intentionally or unintentionally, Village chief, I heard from Xiaoshan that the ghost in Shanghe village appeared again and injured a warlock. Do you know the specific strength of that ghost? That ghost. Huang Taizheng frowned, thought for a while and said, the strength of Shanghe village is not strong, but the fire warlock Zhu Qian from Lushwiven town that it injured this time, and several warrior guards of Zhu Qian, are all in the late stage of the first level. It fought one against many and was able to injure so many people. I'm afraid it has the strength of the peak of the first level. Fortunately, although Zhu Qian was injured, it is said that he also injured it seriously. It is estimated that it will not come out to make trouble again in the near future. Even if it makes trouble, if everyone is prepared, it may not be able to force the door open with a serious injury. Chen Ronghuo nodded. Thinking of the situation at home, he did not comment on what Huang Taizheng said about not coming out to cause trouble. But he did not say much. It was not that he did not want to remind them, but once he reminded them that the ghost ran to Xiahe village, he could not explain why he did not get rid of it after encountering it. Thinking about this in his mind, he suddenly asked curiously, how could the sorcerer from Lushwiven town appear in Shanghe village? Are they going to catch the ghost? No. Hearing Chen Ronghuo's question, Huang Tishan's face suddenly became a little ugly. Add more to ask for recommendation votes. Report on the battle situation. Today's collection increased by more than 270, and the daily recommendation was 199. In addition, the book list seems to have 10, and another chapter will be added tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 36. They went to Shanghe village to collect taxes and recruit soldiers. Huang Taizheng said in a low voice, there is a big mountain to the northwest of Hongyu village. Half of that mountain is in Angsha town and half is in our Lushwiven town. And right in the middle of that big mountain, there is a vein of bronze. This is a huge wealth. Both the lords of Greenwater Bay town and the lords of Angsha town have coveted this bronze vein for a long time. They had fought about this before, but because the situation on the island did not allow it, no big fight broke out. In the end, one person got half of the mineral vein. This time, Earl Baywa fell for unknown reasons, and the island was in chaos. I'm afraid it won't be long before a war breaks out between the two towns. Huang Tishan's answer was a bit vague, but Chen Ronghuo understood what he meant. The lords of Lushwiven town are fighting against the lords of Angsha town, and Shanghe village, as a subsidiary village of Lushwiven town, will definitely have to contribute. Not only Shanghe village, but also other villages, including Giant Crocodile Village, Qinjian Village, and Xiahe Village, will probably have to contribute in the future. It is precisely because of this that Huang Tishan's face looks a little ugly. After guessing the general outline of the matter, Chen Ronghuo secretly shook his head. It's really not a good thing that something like this happened when he first came to this world. Fortunately, he has now established himself in Xiahe village. If not, he doesn't know if he would have been caught in another place. With this in mind, he chatted with Huang Taizhong for a few more words. After getting some information from him, he pretended to touch Huang Lin's forehead with his hand, took back the properties of yellow cabbage and said, "Okay, that's it for today, it's not enough, I'll come back to help you tomorrow." "Thank you, sir." Huang Lin quickly thanked him. After eating a big meal, Huang Lin could clearly feel that his wounds had improved a lot. If this continues, maybe in 2 or 3 days, his injury will be completely healed. "I told you, don't be polite to me." Chen Ronghuo shook his head. Then he turned to look at Ho San, who had not said a few words not far away, and said, "Is that crab at the entrance of the village who can only speak human language still alive? If it's still alive, can you help me get it into my yard? I'm useful." After hearing this, Ho San immediately said, "It's still alive and we didn't touch it? If the young master is of any use, I will go and help you catch him." As he spoke, he walked out quickly. He didn't mind being asked by Chen Ronghuo to do some work. Compared to sitting with Chen Ronghuo, he felt that this was better. After sending Ho San away, Chen Ronghuo turned to Huang Taizhong and said, "Village chief, how often do people in the village go hunting and picking game in the mountains?" Although Huang Taizhong is the head of the village, he is easier to fool. Talking to him, Chen Ronghuo felt no pressure. But Ho San can't. This kid's mind is more flexible than others. When speaking in front of Ho San, he has to think carefully about everything before he can speak. In response to Chen Ronghuo's inquiry, Huang Taizhong said without any hesitation, "The hunting team in the village usually goes to the mountains every half a month, and it takes several days to come back every time. However, at your suggestion, we caught another green water bay river crab to eat last night. The taste of this thing is really good, and there are a lot of these crabs in the swamps, so it is estimated that this year's hunting team will have no problem going to the mountains in a month." Chen Ronghuo accepted Huang Xiaoshan as his apprentice, showed super strength, rescued Huang Lin, and helped the village solve the food problem. Huang Taizhong has now completely convinced him. Chen Ronghuo nodded. The deep mountains dozens of miles away were not safe. There were many demons inside, and Huang Lin was injured there. Every time I go there, the people in the village are extremely worried. So no one wants to go there if it's possible. After thinking for a while, he continued to ask, "What do the villagers do in the village when they are not going to the mountains?" "Practice martial arts," Huang Taizhong replied. "People in the hunting team, children, and some people who are expected to become official martial arts practitioners practice martial arts every day. But after all, people have their limits, and they can't practice martial arts all the time. When not practicing martial arts, both children and adults spend the day wandering around." Chen Rong nodded understandingly. Then he asked Huang Taizhong some questions. After he learned from Huang Taizhong that there were no entertainment activities in the village on weekdays, he finally said, "In this case, the village chief can arrange it so that everyone has a fixed time to practice martial arts. During the rest of the time, if the villagers are willing, they can come to my place for 2 or 3 classes. I am a very restless person, and at the same time, this can be considered as my reward for temporarily staying in the village. I have a lot of time now. 1 class can be calculated as the time of 2 meals. The village chief can help me arrange my time. In addition, starting from today, I can give lessons to the villagers." After thinking for a long time, he decided to try the road of Lord. He has now established himself in Xiahe village, and giving lessons to the villagers and instilling his ideas into them is his first step towards becoming a lord. Noble reward scrolls are difficult to obtain, but since he has ancient books, it may not be impossible for him to obtain them. Moreover, he has ancient books and the power of his left hand, both of which can provide him with a strong guarantee to create a powerful force in the world of gods. If this road doesn't work in the end, it's not too late for him to give up. 2 meals. When Chen Ronghuo was thinking about this, Huang Taizheng was stunned for a moment, then he thought for a moment and said, "I'll thank you on behalf of the village, but sir, how about we set one class for 1 hour? 1 hour?" Chen Ronghuo's eyelids jumped, and then he quickly reacted and said lightly, "That's fine." He didn't find clocks and watches in this world, and he didn't know how this world calculated time. But at this time, he could only answer like this. After dealing with this matter, he chatted with Huang Taizheng for a while, then stood up, said goodbye, and walked out of Huang Tishan's yard. Huang Xiaoshan was also called out by him. On the way back to his home, Chen Ronghuo rushed to Huang Xiaoshan. "Xiaoshan, master asks you, do you know what time it is now?" "What time is it now?" Huang Xiaoshan was stunned for a moment, then looked up at the sun, and said, "It's 8:12 in the morning, master, do you have anything to do?" "Nothing." Chen Ronghuo shook his head. Then he looked up at the sun. After he stared at the sun carefully for a few times, he found that the edge of the sun in this world was like a clock, with digital markings. And there was a black light flashing slowly in those digital markings, like the hands of a watch. At the same time, through comparison, he found that the time in this world should be the same as on Earth, with 24 hours a day. Is this something made by the gods, or is it always like this? He shook his head slightly. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Chaoji Depeng. Chapter 37. Chen Ronghuo's eyelids fell, and he wondered how people in this world would judge the time if it was night. Would it be the moon? What about cloudy days? Thinking about this, he decided to wait until night to see for himself. Then he spoke again, "Xiaoshan, master will test you. Do you know what kind of people warlocks are, or, generally speaking, what abilities do warlocks have?" Huang Xiaoshan touched his head and said excitedly, "I heard from my grandfather that wood warlocks can control plants and cultivate mutant crops. They are logistics professions and their combat effectiveness is not strong. However, some wood warlocks can also control vines to bind and attack enemies. Zhu Qian, the fire warlock in Lushwiven town, can control flames and transform into fire snakes to attack enemies. If I become an earth warlock, I can control the power of the earth, summon earth puppets, or perform rockfall. Master, am I right?" Chen Ronghuo nodded, "Almost." "Ha! Ha!" Suddenly, a loud shout suddenly came from the entrance of the village. Chen Ronghuo stopped and looked in that direction. He immediately saw Zhu Deipen and other members of the hunting team, as well as the children in the village, all gathered in the playground at the entrance of the village, practicing the Tiger Heart Fist. Huang Xiaoshan also looked in that direction. When he saw the children who were older than him punching out one after another, he suddenly showed a trace of envy in his eyes and asked, "Master, I will be better than them when I become a warlock of the earth, right?" "Yes." Chen Ronghuo nodded, then looked at him and said, "And your martial arts aptitude is not bad, you can also practice martial arts in the future." Huang Xiaoshan's martial arts aptitude is 3 points, and he has the opportunity to practice to become a sky warrior. Although it is not as good as the warlock aptitude, it is indeed pretty good. The Lord of Greenwater Bay Town is a warlock and earth warrior in the early stage of the transcendent realm. This shows that practicing both magic and martial arts is feasible. Of course, Huang Xiaoshan's magic aptitude is high, and he must be mainly based on magic and supplemented by martial arts. In this way, no matter how high the achievement of martial arts is, at least it can be achieved that when the enemy approaches, it will not be immediately paralyzed. In fact, not only Huang Xiaoshan is like this, but also himself. After he obtained the qualification of a demon magician and became a formal magician, he must let his pet out and hide behind in battle. But he felt that he also had to make some achievements in martial arts. It doesn't matter how powerful you are, but being strong is the minimum. Really? Huang Xiaoju's eyes suddenly lit up. Although magicians are more noble in this world, there are no magicians in Xiaohe village, only warriors. The education he received since childhood is also to become a powerful warrior. So when he heard Chen Ronghuo say that he could practice martial arts in the future, he was immediately excited. Of course it's true, Chen Ronghuo smiled. Huang Xiaoshan tightened his black fist, his face full of expectation. But at this time, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and said quickly, "By the way, Master, don't be angry when Brother Ho-san hit you yesterday. Brother Ho-san was not originally from our village. He was picked up by my uncle when he was a child and grew up eating at other people's homes. We have deep feelings for my uncle and our village, so he is so. At this point, he touched his head, as if he had forgotten the words, and his little face flushed with anxiety. Don't worry, Chen Ronghuo touched his little head and said, "Your master is not such a stingy person." He didn't need to think too much to know that these words must have been taught to Huang Xiaoshan by someone else, but he didn't know whether it was Huang Taizhong or Huang Lin. When thinking about these, the two turned a corner in the street, and Chen Ronghuo looked up and saw his own courtyard. At this time, Ho-san from Huang Tishan's family, who had left earlier than him, also came from a distance with the crab that could speak. "Young master." Seeing Chen Ronghuo, Ho-san nodded slightly. He was dressed in black coarse cloth, tall and big, carrying a huge crab without feeling heavy. The crab was held in his big hands with thick joints, just like a chicken. Well, Chen Ronghuo nodded, stepped forward to open the gate and said, "Just put this guy in the yard." Ho-san carried the crab, followed Chen Ronghuo's instructions, walked into the yard, and put it down. The fat cat lying on the stool in the yard looked at the listless black big guy, sniffed it, and felt a little strange. He didn't know why the smell of this big guy was so similar to the meat he ate last night. But it didn't think much about it. It looked at Chen Ronghuo, turned its head, looked at the sky, and continued to think about its cat life. "Young master, if there is nothing else, I will go back to practice martial arts first." After putting down the crab, Ho-san said to Chen Ronghuo. Chen Ronghuo nodded, "Okay, you can go first if you are busy. Also, Xiaoshan, you should go back with your brother Ho-san." Ho-san didn't say anything, but Huang Xiaoshan was a little unhappy. He was going to pester Chen Ronghuo and ask him to tell him some stories alone, so that he could show off to others. Chen Ronghuo ignored Huang Xiaoshan's thoughts. He stood at the gate and watched Ho-san lead Huang Xiaoshan to walk away. When they walked more than 10 steps, he seemed to suddenly remember something and suddenly said, "By the way, Ho-san, you have good martial arts talent. Like Huang Xiaoshan, you have the hope of becoming a sky warrior in the future. But by comparison, your warlock aptitude is even higher, and you are already in a semi-awakened state. This is why your spiritual perception is stronger than others. If you want, you can also come to class with others after practicing martial arts. After a while, I will guide you and Huang Xiaoshan to awaken together." Chen Ronghuo's tone was very calm, as if he was just thinking and speaking. But his words sounded like thunder in Ho-san's ears, causing Ho-san's foot, which had just been raised, to fall heavily to the ground, as if it was as heavy as 1,000 pounds, and it was difficult to lift it again for a while. "Young master." After hesitating for a while, Ho-san turned his head with a complicated expression on his face. But at this time, Chen Ronghuo had already walked into the yard and closed the fence door again. Seeing Ho San turn his head to look, Chen Ronghuo stood in the fence door, smiled and nodded at him, saying, "What happened yesterday is over. I may live in Xiahe village for a long time, and I may have to trouble you with many things in the future. I hope you don't mind then." Hearing Chen Ronghuo's words again, Ho San's expression immediately straightened. He straightened his back, like a standing javelin, and said, "Don't worry, sir, your future affairs in Xiahe village are my affairs. If you have anything, just tell me." Chen Ronghuo smiled and waved his hand, saying, "Okay, I believe you, get busy." Ho San has good qualifications, and with the strength of the peak warrior realm, he can now rank second in Xiahe village in terms of strength. In addition to his sorcerer qualifications, once he awakens the bloodline of the Earth War Ape, or breaks through to become an Earth Warrior, I am afraid that the already old Huang Taizheng may not be his opponent. Chen Ronghuo wants to take the path of a lord, and he must find a way to subdue such a general. That's why he has such a sudden show of favor, but not eager. As for when to help Ho San awaken, of course, he will wait until the energy accumulated in the ancient book is enough and he is sure of Ho San's loyalty. Today, there are only 6 votes short of 200 votes. Thank you for your support. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 38. Watching Ho San and Huang Xiaoshan turn around and leave, Chen Ronghuo glanced at the sun in the sky, then ignored the crab lying on the ground, and ignored the fat cat that occasionally stole a glance at him, and came to the door of the house. He stretched out his hand to open the door, and with a slight movement, he found that the door had shaken even more violently. Wooden door, a wooden door made of ordinary materials, which has been in disrepair for a long time, and has been hit by a seriously injured ghost, and is on the verge of being scrapped. After using the ancient book to identify the properties of the wooden door, Chen Ronghuo's pupils shrank suddenly. Before, he still held a glimmer of hope. I hope that everything is just his own fantasy. But now, with the ancient book's identification, he no longer has any luck. Why would this ghost thing target me if it doesn't go to find someone else? Could it sense that I am too weak? If this guy hadn't been seriously injured, would I have been killed by it last night? One thought after another emerged from his mind. Chen Ronghuo took a deep breath, knowing that he had to make some preparations. But he looked up at the sky. It was still early and the sun was high. From Huang Xiaoshan's description, the ghosts in this world are also afraid of sunlight. At least that ghost always appears at night. That means he still has a long time to prepare. And he glanced at the fat cat. He couldn't let the fat cat run around again this time. With these thoughts in his mind, he slowly came to the huge crab in the corner of the yard. Although this guy is not a human, he is at least a living thing. Now while there is still time, he can use it to experiment with the ability of his left hand. Thinking of this, he immediately squatted down with a smile on his face and touched a small stone on the ground with his hand. Petrification add 1, hardness of stone add 2, density of stone add 2. One message after another flashed through Chen Ronghuo's mind, making his eyes light up. Other attributes are fine, the key is the petrification attribute. Just by hearing the name, you know what this thing does. He was thinking, if he got a lot of petrification attributes and slapped the enemy with one palm, what would the enemy become? Would it turn directly into stone? After thinking about it, he excitedly reached out to touch the big claws of the half-dead crab with loose eyelids. At this time, the crab was tied tightly, so he was not afraid of being pinched. When he touched the tip of the crab's claws with his hand, he chose to integrate the add 1 petrification attribute he had just obtained into the crab's claws. This time, he chose to integrate only the crab's big claws, not the whole body of the crab. This is what he just thought of. Before, when he integrated attributes into something, he integrated them into its whole. This time, he tried to see if he could integrate the attributes he had obtained into only a certain part of these things. Mutated crab claws, petrification add 1, while the hardness is increased, it also becomes slower than before, and the taste is not good when eaten. It really works. After the identification with the ancient book, Chen Rong immediately knew that his new attempt was successful. But this is just the first step. He took a deep breath and reached out to touch the crab's claws. At this time, the giant crab finally opened its eyes. It stared at Chen Ronghuo in a daze, not knowing what Chen Ronghuo had done to it, which made it feel a little strange about its claws. Chen Ronghuo ignored its thoughts. When he touched its claws again, he thought and took back the petrification attribute that had just been integrated into its claws. The claws of the Green Water Bay River crab, powerful and sharp, it is the most powerful weapon of the Green Water Bay River crab. This time, a new attribute appeared. This attribute is exactly the same as before when he did not integrate the petrification attribute into it, without any change. However, after seeing this attribute, Chen Ronghuo's eyes lit up. Because the appearance of this attribute is very likely to mean that no matter what attributes he integrates into other objects or lives, no matter what impact these attributes will have on these objects and lives after integrating them, when he takes these attributes back again, those objects or lives will return to their original state. Of course, if you want to verify this, just this one experiment is far from enough. He still needs to do countless experiments. Thinking of this in his heart, he had another idea and put his hand on the crab again. But this time, he chose to integrate the petrification attribute into the entire body of this crab. However, as this attribute was integrated, Chen Ronghuo did not find that this big crab had any obvious changes. Lightly mutated Green Water Bay River crab, body slightly petrified, slightly enhanced resistance, slightly reduced appetite, great tonic, but poor meat quality. Lightly mutated? Chen Ronghuo raised his eyebrows. He knew that the petrification attribute he integrated into its body might be too little. After all, this petrification attribute was just touched from a small stone, so it was normal for the amount to be small. Thinking of this, Chen Ronghuo immediately stood up excitedly. He knew that there was a limit to the attributes that could be integrated into any object, and it would be difficult for him to completely petrify this crab. But even if he could only integrate a small amount of petrification into the enemy's body, it would probably be able to play a killer role. After getting up, he walked out of the yard, put his hands behind his back, and walked towards the low hills behind his house. He had already taken a general look at the general situation of Xiahe village before, and knew that there were a lot of stones stored on the low hills in the back mountain. Anyway, he was free, so he planned to get all the petrification properties, hardness properties, and density properties of those stones. In the yard, the huge crab turned its grey stone-like eyes slowly, watching Chen Ronghuo push open the fence door and leave, and opened its mouth, but said nothing. The fat cat lying on the stool looked at it and ignored it. This guy is so ugly that Chen Ronghuo will definitely not like him. In this way, it doesn't have to deal with this stupid big guy like it did with the wood spirit demon butterfly. After leaving the yard, Chen Ronghuo came to the place where the stones were stored in just 2 or 3 minutes. There were at least 180 stones, and it was unknown where they were transported from and what they were used for. Each stone was not small. Before and after reaching this pile of stones, he immediately stretched out his left hand and touched them one by one. However, unlike the small stone before, Chen Ronghuo found that he usually had to touch these big stones more than 10 times before he could find out one attribute. It took him more than 20 seconds to touch out all the attributes of a stone. In addition to the fact that some stones were stacked on top of each other, he spent more than half an hour here before he could find out all the attributes of all the stones. Waste stone, it retains the appearance of a stone, but it may turn into ashes if a stronger wind blows. After finishing, Chen Ronghuo identified the stone in front of him and nodded with satisfaction. It was just some stones. He believed that even if he turned them all into nothing, the people in Xiahe village would not say anything. Then he turned around and returned home. Seeing Chen Ronghuo return, the crab slowly turned its eyes and opened its mouth, as if it wanted to say something to him. But Chen Ronghuo did not notice these. He walked in front of the crab, clapped his hands, and slapped part of the petrification attribute he had just obtained into its body. 10 book lists plus more. Report on the situation. Today's collections increased by 290, and the daily recommendation votes reached more than 270, breaking the record again. Thank you for your support. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Landing 300 years in advance. Author, Xiaoji Depeng. Chapter 39. As Chen Ronghuo slapped it, the big river crab with its mouth half open suddenly froze there completely. Its originally inky black shell suddenly transformed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Layers of stone piled up and emerged, as if in a short period of time, its shell had undergone millions of years of evolution and became a fossil. When touched, it gave people a hard and rough feeling. Did it work? Chen Ronghuo looked deep, and under his gaze, he used the identification ability of ancient books. Half-petrified river crab, mutated by integrating petrification attributes. The petrification attribute of the big stone add 4, defense enhanced, attack decreased, slow movement, feed on earth and stone, and do not drink water. Its claws are basically just for show, and they are not a threat to most lives. After identifying the attributes of this river crab, Chen Ronghuo's pupils suddenly shrank. He never thought that he would actually make such a thing. A half-petrified river crab that feeds on earth and stone is already a brand new life. In the distance, the fat cat stood up from the stool. It rolled its eyes and looked at the half-petrified river crab carefully, and its heart was in turmoil. Needless to say, this was Chen Ronghuo's doing. It didn't expect that Chen Ronghuo had this ability besides his good cooking skills. Chen Ronghuo took a closer look at the half-petrified river crab. He felt that it looked much better now than before. However, the stone chips falling from its half-stone eyeballs as it slowly turned made him a little worried about whether this guy would still be alive after he extracted the petrification attribute from its body, and if so, whether its eyes would still work. At this time, the big river crab was also in a state of collapse. What happened to me? Why can't I close my eyes? Why do I see everything gray? Also, I'm really hungry, but why do I suddenly want to eat dirt? Chen Ronghuo waited for a while and saw that the petrified joints of this guy could still move, but they were worn out during the movement. He thought and put his left hand on it, and took back the 4 petrification attributes that had just been integrated into its body. As these attributes were taken back, the stone on the crab quickly faded and returned to its original black as ink. Can it be restored to its original state after such a big change just now? Seeing this scene, Chen Ronghuo's heart moved slightly. Boy, you are looking for a trap. No, don't play with me, okay? At this moment, Chen Ronghuo just took back these attributes, and the big crab suddenly shivered, opened its mouth quickly, and blurted out a sentence. It was really scared. Yesterday, the people of Xiahe village threw another crab into the pot and boiled it in front of it, and it was already scared. Then it was tied up and thrown at the entrance of Xiahe village, lying numbly all night, and it was already numb physically and mentally. But compared with the experience just now, these are nothing. Just now, it felt like its body wasn't its own. Hearing this big guy suddenly speak, Chen Ronghuo was startled, and once again realized that this guy was indeed a little different from the ordinary green water bay river crab. Counting, are you looking for a claw, and are you okay, This is already the third sentence of human speech from its mouth. From this, it can be seen that this guy's intelligence is really not low. It's okay, don't be afraid, I'll experiment again. Chen Ronghuo comforted this guy, then squatted down and put his left hand on it again. However, this time he did not integrate other attributes into the body of this crab, but planned to try to see if he could extract some attributes of this crab from its body. Once, twice. Chen Ronghuo's left hand on the crab rubbed more and more times. It was not until a long time later that a message came into his mind. The power of the crab claw add 1. He calculated that he had touched it about 70 or 80 times before he touched out an attribute from its body. Then he tried again. Hardness of crab shell add 1. Fragrant crab add 1. After repeated experiments, Chen Ronghuo suddenly found that it was much more difficult for him to feel out the attributes of this river crab than to feel out the attributes of other inanimate objects. Generally speaking, he had to touch it 70 or 80 times each time before he could succeed once. It seems that there are indeed some differences between life and non-life, or consciousness and non-consciousness. Through the comparison, his mind moved slightly. Then Chen Ronghuo looked at the time and felt that the time was almost up. At the same time, he found that some villagers were walking towards him, so he returned all the attributes he had just felt out of this big guy's body to it. At the same time, he turned it over with force, so that this guy finally turned over. Okay, I'll let you go this time. Eat something first, don't starve to death, and we'll continue when we have time. As he said this, he reached out and integrated 4 points of the petrification attribute of the big stone into this guy's body. This guy's limit is just this, any more won't fit in. With the 4 points of petrification attribute integrated, this big guy turned back into his previous appearance, with serious petrification on his body, as if he had become a fossil. Then Chen Ronghuo put his hand on the rope that bound it, touched it a few times, and found all the properties of toughness in the rope. With a slight shake, the whole rope broke and fell apart. After being released by Chen Ronghuo, the river crab moved its 8 claws and subconsciously took a step to the left, but it took several seconds to complete the step. After one step, it moved a few steps sideways. And the time it took was the same. After moving 4 or 5 steps and completely moving to the corner, it immediately fell to the ground with a plop, looking forward with its petrified eyes, showing an expression of despair. Sure enough, this guy is no threat to me now. Chen Ronghuo was quite satisfied just seeing this scene. However, the petrification attribute has a huge effect on this crab, but it is still unknown whether it has such a big effect on humans. After all, crabs belong to the crustaceans among arthropods, and this thing may naturally fit with the petrification attribute. And it is still unknown whether the petrification attribute can be used on humans, or whether the human body can be integrated with the petrification attribute, and how much it can be integrated. It would be great if I could become a noble lord and own my own territory as soon as possible. With his personality, if he had his own territory, he would definitely not feel any guilt if he found some unforgivable criminals to experiment with his abilities. As for experimenting with this ability on ordinary people at will, he would not do it. Even if he was in another world, this was one of his bottom lines. At least for now. Shaking his head, Chen Ronghuo looked at the group of people coming from a distance, probably to attend class, and his mind moved slightly. He walked to his house and integrated the hardness properties of a large number of large stones he had obtained from the back mountain into his house. Earth house, hardness of large stones add 100. Then he integrated a toughness property he had taken out from the yellow wood bow into the door hinge of the wooden door. Now, his house is much more solid. If he also took out other toughness properties from the yellow wood bow and integrated them into the hinge of the wooden door, let alone the knocking ghost, it would be unknown whether Huang Taizhong could destroy it in a short time. Thank you for your recommendation votes and the 700 coins reward from Yan Xiao Yuan Ming landing 300 years in advance. Author, Chao Ji Dupang. Chapter 40. Chen Ronghuo opened the door, returned to the house and took out the yellow wooden bow. During the process of taking it out, his left hand kept stroking it repeatedly. The yellow wood bow has a total of 10 toughness attributes and 10 precision attributes. The role of the precision attribute is hard to say, but the role of the tenacity attribute is obvious. At the same time, through experiments again and again, Chen Ronghuo discovered that the abilities of various attributes also have levels. There is just no specific way to divide them. For example, the attributes contained in this yellow wooden bow, which was blessed by the ancestors of the Huang family with a tough array and a precise array, clearly exceed the attributes he can absorb from other items. The basis for his judgment was the difficulty of extracting various attributes from various items. Master, we are here. After Chen Ronghuo touched it hundreds of times with his left hand and finally found 2 toughness attributes and 1 precision attribute from the yellow wooden bow, Huang Xiaoshan's excited voice rang out from outside the fence. I saw it. Chen Ronghuo smiled, placed the yellow wooden bow at the root of the wall, then integrated the 2 toughness attributes he had just found into the door hinges, walked to the fence door, and opened the door. This time there were a lot of people coming with Huang Xiaoshan. Not only were the children who were in class with him yesterday, Huang Hu, a big man who liked to go bare-chested, but also Huang Taizheng, Ho San, Zhu Daipen and other members of the hunting team. There was even Huang Lin, whose injuries were much better. When Chen Ronghuo opened the fence door, he suddenly discovered that other people in the village were also walking over from a distance. There are more than 100 households in the village, and these more than 100 households together have 300 to 400 people. At this time, when Chen Ronghuo looked at it, it seemed as if everyone in the village was surrounding him from a distance. He had a headache. He really didn't expect there would be so many people. He is only one person, and it is impossible for him to teach so many people together. Sir, Huang Tishan said with some embarrassment, most of them came here to watch the excitement. The people who will teach you later are mainly children from the village and a dozen people from the hunting team. Chen Ronghuo breathed a sigh of relief. He was really shocked to see so many people just now. At this time, Huang Taizheng hesitated for a while and then spoke again, but Master, I just heard Huang Xiaoshan say that you said that Ho San also has the qualifications of a warlock. Is this true? Hearing what he said, everyone else in the village suddenly pricked up their ears. The main reason why so many of them came here was because of this matter. It's true. Seeing everyone's expressions, Chen Ronghuo suddenly realized. He smiled and nodded, Ho San's warlock qualifications are also good. When the time comes, I will try to help him awaken. On average, 1 in 100 people in the world of gods has the qualification of a warlock. But not everyone with warlock qualifications can become a warlock. If you want to become a warlock, you still need to awaken. Different warlocks have different awakening methods. Of course, some people are lucky and may wake up automatically due to emotional excitement or other reasons. This is the case when Ho San's bloodline is half awakened. But the success rate of awakening through this method is pitifully low. In addition, most people never know that they have the qualifications of a warlock, so warlocks have such a high status in the continent of the gods. Ho San also has the qualifications of a warlock. What a blessing! His martial arts qualifications are so high. He has already reached the peak of the warrior realm at the age of 18. If he awakens his qualifications as a warlock in the future, his achievements will be truly limitless. The key is Mr. Chen. If it weren't for Mr. Chen, Ho San might not know that he has the blood of a warlock for the rest of his life, and it would be difficult for him to awaken. After Chen Ronghuo finished speaking, the villagers suddenly started talking. Yesterday Ho San also took action against Mr. Chen, but Mr. Chen ignored the past and promised to help Ho San in the future. Ho San has met a noble person, and we in Xiahe village have also met a noble person. Some people spoke loudly, as if they were speaking deliberately to Chen Ronghuo. Chen Ronghuo smiled slightly and didn't care. The people in Xiaohe village wanted him to stay in Xiaohe village, and he also wanted to stay in Xiaohe village. The two were incompatible. The only difference is that the people of Xiaohe village kept him in the hope that he would bring prosperity to Xiaohe village. But he wanted to stay in Xiaohe village, but he wanted to take Xiaohe village for his own use. But overall, it's a win-win for both. Zhu Deipen in the crowd scratched his head when he heard that Ho San really had the qualifications of a warlock, and suddenly said shamelessly to Chen Ronghuo, "Mr. Chen, can you see that I have the qualifications of a warlock?" Chen Ronghuo glanced at him, shook his head in amusement and said, "Not just you, I've seen most of the others as well. Except for Ho San and Huang Xiaoshan, no one else in the village should have warlock qualifications." Zhu Deipen suddenly looked disappointed when he heard this. That's a high-ranking warlock. Everyone else also sighed in their hearts. Chen Ronghuo smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if you don't become a warlock. Your martial arts qualifications are not bad, and you can hope to become an earth warrior in the future. Moreover, martial arts qualifications can be changed. As long as you work hard, you may not be unable to become a strong person." Zhu Deipen shook his head. Martial arts qualifications can indeed be changed, but if you want to change martial arts qualifications, there are generally only two ways: practicing some powerful skills and taking natural treasures. But whether it is a powerful skill or a natural treasure, it is not so easy to get. Seeing Zhu Deipen's expression, Chen Ronghuo's mind moved, and suddenly said, "I don't like fighting very much, and I have a lot of trivial matters to deal with when I first come here. If you are willing, you can be a guard beside me. When the time is right, I may be able to find a way to help you improve your martial arts qualifications." In the morning, when Huang Taizheng mentioned Zhu Qian, the fire magician in Lushuivan town, he mentioned that he had a warrior guard, so he suddenly had such an idea in his mind. Become a guard? Improve martial arts qualifications. Hearing Chen Ronghuo's words, Zhu Deipen's eyes instantly shone brightly. Many magicians in this world have warrior guards. But he never thought that a powerful magician like Chen Ronghuo actually planned to find a warrior guard in Xiaohe village. Therefore, as soon as Chen Ronghuo said this, he felt something in his heart, knowing that his chance had come. He knew that he had to seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity no matter what. But before he could agree, Chen Ronghuo saw his expression and said again, "Of course, if you want to be my bodyguard, you have to go through some tests first. Let alone character, at least you have to have a certain strength." As he said this, he turned around and came to his house, pointing to the house that had just been strengthened by 100 big stones and said, "This earth house has just been reinforced by me. You said yesterday that you could break the blue and white rock at the entrance of the village with 3 punches, so now you can see how many punches you can take to break my house." It is good for him to take Zhu Deipen as a bodyguard. But he can't let Zhu Deipen become his bodyguard too easily. Only when it is difficult to get, will you cherish it more after getting it. Report on the battle situation, daily collection of 300, daily recommendation of more than 260, the test push is almost over today, the test push has increased by 2,000 collections in a week, almost double the second place, and the recommendation votes are also about double the second place. I sincerely thank everyone for their support. However, from 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, the points will be changed. There are many great gods in this point. I hope it can continue to rise. Everyone must continue to support it.